As a child, my mother clamped down on me. She made clear that my father wasn't welcome, and he abandoned me in more ways than one. I never knew he was on George Bush's ship in the Navy, not for years and years and years and years later. I might have been able to think properly about the way that I was being targeted if I had known that I was a priceless war object which was kept from me. Carnegie Mellon University, what I knew about it, Jeff Thompson, who lived up by Cyril Wecht, I believe, was on the football team there when they were Carnegie Tech. And Kathy Abel, whose brother Dale Abel was in theater tech, I believe. His brother Philip had web feet. Would take, classes during high school over the summer there. I admired their peace marches, their involvement in the peace marches when we marched all the way down to see Joan Baez at Point State Park when her husband was arrested. We passed by Carnegie Mellon on our way, and they seemed to be. I looked forward to being a bright senior in high school so that I could apply there. This was before any of the toxic ash violence befell me. But I was, after she got the letter, by the way, I think that's something that should be acknowledged. She came over to my house, made out with me, and took me down to meet some friends of hers, and she put up a poem and said, "Hide here under my cloak." Her friends were Matt Marcus, and they had things in the elevator like beat me, make me write bad checks. But I knew other people besides Leslie Cass from the governor's school. Brian Kopp evidently had read my letter and started slandering me. He works with Krim Madani. But although I met Ben Carter, I didn't know him really. I didn't know Ross at the time very well. I don't think I knew him at all yet. Cronenbitter. And I certainly didn't know. Well, what I knew was Tom McConnell. After governor's school, we had hitchhiked out to Oberlin together. And he was diabetic. And had rough hands, like Midori Goto. Fripp had very soft hands, surprisingly. And he was friends with David Strang, who lived with Matt Marcus and was a friend of Ben Carter. They were in theater technology. David Strang and Dale Abel and Norman Schwab, who was present when I interviewed Peter Gabriel. And so I mingled a little bit with the kids from the governor's school at CMU. But I think we graffitied a dormitory once, which caused some problems. When I went down to Bethany, West Virginia to paint the dormitory wall, it is the person who was in charge of that, who I believe was a suspicious Zionist. But David Strang instigated an incident where I don't think we did any damage to anything, but we painted the walls or something. I don't really remember doing it, but I vaguely remember it happening. But I was invited to Carnegie Mellon University. It was not destructive in the way that the skinhead graffiti in the bathrooms was. It was just silly stuff. But admittedly, we shouldn't have done that. The integrity of the university was not being challenged. I was invited to write by a man's team named David Demarest, who knew Tony DiCicci, who ran the RTech laboratories and WQED's Ammons House Coalition, who locked me in the house from the inside later with the person who had tortured me and forced us to sell our house and move. Demarest had been my mother's student, my mother's teacher when she was professor mentor when she was a student teacher at a college where she had once almost gotten raped by her testimony. I knew there was some fraternity bad blood between Pitt and CMU that came to blows, and so they moved the Pitt fraternity, but I never really um, targeted Carnegie Mellon. What I was after was raising consciousness about the military-industrial complex and what sort of person Ronald Reagan really was. And Gregor Morgan came on to me, invited me to the International Peace and Security meetings where I learned some fairly high-level things. So I was welcome. I was invited to come to the faculty forum. But if you back up, I was given the wrong day, of course, by Peter Shell. If you back up, Peter Shell's involvement in this is very important because he made the Cara tape with Andrea Swimmer. He was introduced to me by Tom Hodge of Greenville, who used to, there was an occasion of which I am absolutely clean. Because I'm deaf, we were in a van and somebody came asking for somebody who was evidently a lawyer following up on some criminal cases. And after he left, I said, who was he asking for? And Hodge laughed and said, this guy who's sitting right here. So he was lying about his identity. And it may have been a PSYOP division of Carnegie Mellon University. They do operate tangentially when they feel like it. But Hodge was the one, and that fellow who I just mentioned, Dornhege, Arnold Dornhege or something, was the one who tore my father's cashmere coat to shreds after he died. They gave it to his dog to eat. They were living next door to the woman who introduced me to Gail Burstyn. But Hodge introduced me to Peter Shell. I used to hang out with him occasionally. Fig and I would do paintings together, and there was a woman named Kasparowski, and I asked her if she'd heard of that other guy. She said, well, I've heard, if she was related to him, she said, I've heard of them. So this was all, I was evidently attacked with the help of Carnegie Mellon University, who ran this concentration camp over in the East End where they dipped a rag and paint in her and put it in a paper bag and told me to put it over my face and breathe. I was writing to, they kidnapped me and stolen cars. They really battered me, tortured me. And it affected my judgment, obviously. I was just 12 years old. And we moved. We sold our house and moved. But I was writing to Tim Menes. I drew him cartoons. What happened? He was evidently streamlining them with Donald Trump because the script was Trump's idea. What he had in mind was when Queerball finds out that he's a priceless World War II asset, he's going to angle towards Midori Goto, and we're going to win. Ha ha ha. Victory for Yoko Ono in Russia. Yanking him away from the girl who he was looking for all his life as a virgin, and have Midori Goto dance in the wind with as the Beauty and the Beast in an embrace with Kasparowski, and while he's having seizures from the neurotraumatic rejection trauma that they implanted with the help of a neuropsychiatrist from Attica State Prison. And this was their big gig, like pull the Ripper on the gyroscope. And I denied that my father did anything to provoke that out of Carnegie Mellon University. He was a school bus driver. They came and killed him and graffitied his obituary with their legendary green Germany injection. People in the courthouse are obviously going to have severe language problems there, but it says inject parochial values. And that was the injection issue came up on Mount Desert Island. Dono Who is like Donald Ono and the Nosferatu Who. And Greening of Germany is like German Green Party. I mean, they're going to have, it's serious Civil War graffiti. And what they do is they depredate by inventology. Anything that happens in Pennsylvania, they say it's a witch. He made me twist my ankle. That's what they, you follow the bouncing ball. It's a magic trick of the Heinz family. We are like the ancestors of Africa because we collect swastikas. And that's a sacred African ancestor symbol. Nelson Harrison says, yes, that's right. That's right. This is part of the sacred Jewish Negro Alliance. And, one of my friends died. She got sick and died. Her name was Sue. And then she was part of this crowd that moved in next door to me with sights and Tom Hodge pulling up on his motorcycle. And he would take kids out rappelling. I believe he told me a story of a fellow who died with him rappelling, but I'm not sure about that. I don't really remember all that clearly. But they were hanging. The girls were guy happy. I got passed around between some of the chicks and stuff. And there were always people who were angling at me about Leslie Katz. And they diagnosed the neuroplasm with the help of Peter Gabriel and came in and, really pulled an Al Gore. They really pulled an Al Gore. And after COVID, she showed up, So it's a strange little masquerade of people. Vince Irini was covering. See, it's a hillbilly tribe who used me as a child and tortured me and committed a major series of hate crimes against my person. It's very, very serious. Whoever it is that has asked me to give this testimony, it is a very serious criminal syndicate. And it involved Martin Sheen, Sissy Spacek, and Vince Irini, among others, including John Schulman, who was arrested on $6 million museum heist. Now, everybody knows how dangerous it is to report assholes, but I did try to get the attention of the postal authorities. I went to them and said, it sounded to me like John Schulman defrauded you by reporting a rare book is missing so that he could collect the insurance. And they just chased me out of town because the Jewish people in the postal authorities are on a Ripper Hatter spree. They're involved in all of this networking and trafficking. The people who were sending me the letters of Gail Burstyn almost certainly included a mailman who was on the watch from any strange letters that might come from me. I remember ordering the soundtrack of Dracula from the back of a comic book, and it's the only thing that never showed up. But boy, did I ever get the soundtrack of Dracula, boy. So, I think the postal authorities were clearly involved. It was during Nixon's relatively irregular reign. And they knew that they saw me as a pussy. They would just knock me out, beat me up, drag me around, humiliate me. Michael Reagan's favorite scene is why you're after this, I see. Well, there you go. Michael Reagan gets his favorite scene some more. Hey, wow. So your interrogation was a big success. Whoopee-doo for Jay Inslee.